Yo, Big D back with another edition of the Big D podcast. Before I bring in the ninth special guest, please subscribe, like, and share the Spunky Spectrum Sports YouTube page. NFL draft time, baby. So, there's content around the corner. Also, check out the Big D podcast for audio listeners on Spotify and Apple. So, joining me this evening, based on the hat, it's got to be a New York Jet discussion. So, joining us to talk everything Gang Green, the owner of the fantasy. Is it fantasy winners or fantasy writers?
It's a league winners.
A league winner, sorry.
You're
Thomas
good.
Christopher. So, Thomas, uh, wait a minute. I've got to do this before we start. Jets, Jets, Jets.
Jets, baby. There you go. You got it. How you doing today, man?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. So, obviously, the New York Jets are now the longest team without a playoff berth in any of the four North American sports now that the Sacramento Kings of all teams made it.
Yeah, didn't see that coming on my bingo card this year. I'm not a huge NBA guy anymore, but that one hurt to see the Kings get in, and now we get to be a true laughing stock. Hopefully this is the last year though.
Hey, I mean, every team's got hope. I mean, there's seemingly one team breaking a long playoff drought. I mean, last year my Jags after 2 years of getting a one pick won the AFC South. So maybe the Jets do the same this year.
That's what I'm hoping so, man. And maybe, if get the rumblings of Aaron Rodgers are, true, that could happen with the Jets sooner or later as well.
Okay, so wait, you actually make a trade that actually helps your team for once instead of hurting your team.
That's what I'm hoping at least. But if what I'm hearing in that Green Bay wants a first round pick, if the Jets do that, then I'll be pretty concerned about the direction the team's going in.
Well, obviously, it's the NFL rumor going around town now. The New York Jets and Aaron Rodgers are interested in marrying one another because the Jets want Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers has said on the Pat McAfee show he wants to play for the Jets. So, my first question to you, Thomas, is why would Aaron Rodgers want to play for the New York Jets?
So before the team hired Nathaniel Hackett as offensive coordinator, I wouldn't really have had a clear answer for that. Because honestly, outside of perhaps Garrett Wilson and Brees Hall, there really isn't too much to like about the Jets. And that's just being honest. Their offensive line was pretty putrid last year, both in the run and the pass game, which hasn't really been anything new to the Jets for the past couple of years. They traded Elijah Moore, who I thought was a great receiver, but of course, after his outbursts last year against Mike LaFleur, who is the brother of Packers head coach Matt LaFleur, I knew that Elijah Moore wasn't going to be a Jet anymore. So when Nathaniel Hackett got hired as offensive coordinator, when the Jets released Mike LaFleur from his contract, that kind of signaled to me the direction the Jets were going in and made it seem like Aaron Rodgers coming to the Jets wasn't necessarily an inevitability. It's just that it was more likely it was going to happen. And I think a familiarity with Hackett's offense as coordinator of the Jets would play like a big role into why he would be there. And of course, Alan Lazard joining the Jets too doesn't hurt.
So, obviously, there are a couple interesting things about the Jets. I mean, Garrett Wilson is one because we saw what he did last year. I mean, he looked like the best receiver coming out of the draft, performed really well, may have helped people win fantasy leagues, great dynasty, DFS player. But the question is Garrett Wilson a number one receiver? Or was he just a product of the Jets not having anybody else?
That's a great question. Personally, I'm hoping that he's a great receiver. Obviously, as a Jets fan, I'm a little biased. But when you see how many targets he received last year, he was I believe he was top 5 in the NFL in targets last year, between multiple different quarterbacks. So having a high target share like that on a bad team, it can raise some concerns. I wouldn't be surprised to see a drop in targets this season, but with better efficiency, if that makes sense. At least if Aaron Rodgers is throwing him the ball. But we're going to find out real quick with the addition of Alan Lazard and Mecole Hardman as well, if Wilson is actually a wide receiver one.
True. I mean, the fact that Rodgers has got at least some familiarity with Alan Lazard, knows the system, so won't be. But is Robert Saleh a good enough head coach to get the most out of Rodgers? Because seemingly in today's NFL, offensive-minded coaches win Super Bowls. We've seen Sean McVay, Bruce Arians, Andy Reid win Super Bowls, and Robert Saleh is the defensive-minded head coach. And yeah, the Jets' defense was fantastic last year. But is Robert Saleh good enough to get the most out of Aaron Rodgers at 38, 39 years old?
That's a good question, too. Saleh, he's a great motivator of men, but Aaron Rodgers isn't really. To me, Rodgers isn't a guy that necessarily needs motivation from a coach. I think he does a lot of stuff out of spite, to be honest. When we heard that report that Rodgers was something like 90% retired when he came out of his, darkness retreat, and then he heard that the Packers were shopping him around and then he wanted to play again. I think a lot of the stuff that he wants to do going forward, at least, is kind of to prove people wrong, to give people the finger. The big question with Robert Saleh is if he can get the rest of the team motivated. I think Rodgers would play a part in that. The Hackett hire is questionable. I know a lot of people didn't really like that prior to Aaron joining. I mean, Aaron still hasn't joined, but we're assuming that he is going to join. So the question would become, like, how can Saleh gel that team together and work with the offensive side of the ball, the coach, the players, and everything like that, to be able to get them there? And right now, I'm kind of on the fence. We saw last year the way he handled the Zach Wilson situation and the Mike White situation when Wilson got hurt, or got benched rather, after the Patriots game. Mike White came in, played extremely well, and then Robert Saleh didn't really know how to handle that situation going forward. He was going back and forth, saying Mike White's the guy, but still trying to prep Wilson up like Wilson was going to be a starter. He needs to be way more decisive as a head coach if the Jets want to have like substantial success, at least in my opinion.
I also think that if you're going to have a defensive-minded head coach, you've got to have a strong offensive coordinator and get the Jets fired the other LaFleur brother and replace him with Nathaniel Hackett. So that felt like an odd one, but maybe that's because maybe that was because you were getting some guy from Green Bay, but we'll see if and when that trade happens.
Yeah, that remains to be seen. Like the Hackett hire, the Jets need to hope that Rodgers comes in order for the Hackett hire to make any type of sense, because I don't think anybody wants to see the Jets offense with Nathaniel Hackett as offensive coordinator and then them running out Zach Wilson or somebody this year. It's not going to fly.
So ultimately, why would the Jets want Aaron Rodgers? Because is it Aaron Rodgers or bust for Neil? Because Derek Hall is with the Saints. Jimmy Garoppolo signed with the Raiders. Is it Aaron Rodgers or bust for the Jets?
Absolutely. A lot of people want to say that there's, a chance the team could go after Lamar Jackson. That's not going to happen. It's just not. The team isn't going to give up that draft capital for Lamar when there's that many holes on the team. And they kind of screwed themselves. I was a big proponent of the Jets going after Derek Carr. Sure, he would have cost some money, but the team would have saved the draft pick and they would have gotten average to above average quarterback play. And Carr has been known to step up when he has great players around him. I mean, last year was kind of a bad example with Josh McDaniels as the head coach there, but we've seen McDaniels kind of kind of flame out during his time in Denver, when he had opportunities to create, what he's trying to do again in Las Vegas. So I wanted them to go Derek Carr, or maybe Garoppolo as a backup option. I didn't think. See, the problem is going after Aaron Rodgers kind of only gives you a 1-year window, 2 maximum. Because, I mean, I don't know about you, but I don't expect Rodgers to play more than 2 years maximum. You know what I mean? So they're putting all their chips in that, all their eggs in that basket, and it's definitely Aaron Rodgers or bust. If the Jets don't get him, by the draft, I would be very concerned as a Jets fan.
Well, I mean, if you look at it from a Green Bay standpoint, if they wait until June 1st, then the dead cap hit gets more alleviated on this year's cap, but then you don't get a draft. Then Green Bay doesn't get a draft pick on this draft. It would be on next year's draft, which, depending on what happens, I mean, it could be a conditional round pick, where if like the Jets may be like a hockey trade where if the Jets made the AFC Championship game or the Super Bowl, then the Packers might get a first round pick back. But it seems more like a hockey trade than an NFL trade.
Yeah, so I've heard a lot of people talking about the post June 1st trade happening. As a fan and as somebody who covers the Jets, I would not feel comfortable with that, if I'm part of the Jets. I mean, we all know Aaron Rodgers is great, but still, you want to have more than 2 months to prepare, with your starting quarterback, regardless of age, regardless of experience, especially on a new team, to get ready for the new year. It makes sense for Green Bay, though, as you said, they would have to settle for a draft pick in the 2024 NFL draft. If that's the route they want to go, that'd be very interesting. But for the Jets, I think that they're trying really hard to get this trade done by this upcoming NFL draft.
So, where would Aaron Rodgers rank in terms of AFC quarterbacks? Because it seems like every good quarterback is in the AFC, outside Jalen Hurts is in the AFC. I mean, you've got Pat Mahomes, Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert, Trevor Lawrence, Lamar if he ever plays for the Baltimore Ravens again.
Right. I have him maybe. So, as it would stand right now, I probably have him at 5, about 4 or 5. I mean, he would be behind. He'd be behind Mahomes. He would be behind Josh Allen. He'd be behind Burrow. Then when it gets to Herbert, Lamar, T-Law, that's where I kind of would put Rodgers in that tier 2. You know what I mean? I think he'd be somewhere in there. I wouldn't be comfortable giving him a number grade per se, but I think he'd be the top end of the tier 2 of quarterbacks in the AFC, which, we'll see how good that would be for a Super Bowl. I don't know though.
I mean, 5, 8 years ago, I would say Aaron Rodgers be at the top of the list, but to me, Rodgers regress. He doesn't really take a lot of chances, doesn't even run anymore. And you look at it, Aaron Rodgers has not been great in big games. I mean, he lost an home NFC Championship game to the Bucs, lost a home playoff game to Jimmy Garoppolo with one shoulder, then lost a home do-or-die game against the Detroit Lions with Jared Goff, who can't play in 15-degree weather.
Yeah, that meltdown on week 18 against the Lions, I was not expecting that one. That one was I don't think anybody was, to be honest. I mean,
I should have expected it because the Packers have laid down the past 3 Januaries now.
Yeah, they haven't had the same type of fight to them. I don't know if, pardon me, I don't know if it's Rodgers regressing or that team not gelling completely anymore. I don't know what was going on, but that team was they were lucky to even be in that chance last year, and then to squander it, lay an egg against Detroit. That was bad.
Yeah, so are you worried that if Aaron Rodgers is ultimately traded to the Jets, that he will show up? Because it seems like Aaron Rodgers does his own thing, like he'll Jeopardy, he'll potentially not, potentially not show up for off-season workouts, minicamp, training camp, because he's got to learn. He might know the offense, but he's got to learn the new receivers.
Right. I've seen some videos, I've read some things that he's been working out like with receivers offhand, but that's not the same thing as, working with the offense as a whole. That is something I'm actually concerned about, is him getting acclimated to the Jets players themselves. Especially because we know he's not going to play any preseason either. You know what I mean? So that's just less and less time he has to connect with the Jets players. And like I said, as somebody who follows the team, it's concerning that the Jets are putting all their eggs in this Aaron Rodgers basket, which I'm pretty certain is because of the Jets owner, Woody Johnson. He's infatuated with old Packers quarterbacks. If you look at what they did, yeah, exactly. 2008 with Brett Favre, 2000 Brett Favre. It's the same thing. It's almost mirror to mirror 15 years later. It's almost the same situation. And I'm worried that he's kind of setting up the current Jets regime to fail, because personally, I believe if the Jets don't make the playoffs, or if they only win one playoff game, I have a feeling that somebody, either Robert Saleh or Joe Douglas, is probably going to lose their job.
So, how much do you think Woody Johnson would be willing to give up in an Aaron Rodgers trade, and how much do you think Joe Douglas would be willing to give up? Because, we've heard different. It seems like the trade's been largely agreed. It's like, what do the Packers want? What would the Jets be willing to give up? And how many years will Aaron Rodgers play? Because how much would you give up in for Aaron Rodgers? Just 1, maybe 2 years.
So I'm going to start with like what I think Woody would have given up. I think Woody Johnson would have given up maybe both seconds this year and probably a first next year. Like when I say he's obsessed, there's been rumors in the Jets organization that the reason that they let Derek Carr walk away without a contract was because of Woody Johnson and his infatuation with Aaron Rodgers. Joe Douglas, I think Joe Douglas is the Jets have been pretty bad with trades, but Joe Douglas has been kind of like a pretty good, trade maestro. He's conducted some good ones. The Elijah Moore trade, that's kind of a wash in my opinion, but I think Douglas would probably give up like a second this year and then a pick next year based on conditions, which is probably what I would do as well. I'd give up one of the second round picks we have this year, because I'm pretty sure we have it's either 41, 42, or 42 and 43. I can't remember.
43.
Yep, that's it. So they'll have back-to-back picks. I believe that I would give one of those picks and then a conditional pick next year, depending on how well Aaron Rodgers does and if he actually plays next year.
Yeah, I kind of like that, because the Jets could still get a lineman on one of these, maybe a tight end and 13. So then you're not blowing all your chips from this year's or next year's draft. You're blowing a little bit of each.
Right, exactly. And as much as it hurts to see the team get rid of Elijah Moore, I think getting that second round pick in return could be pretty big if one of the seconds are used for a trade with Green Bay. And from what I've heard, there's supposedly, I've heard a couple things, but supposedly there's 2 different types of trade sets that are quote unquote being agreed upon between the Jets and Green Bay based on how the draft is supposed to pan out. One of those involves the Jets and the Packers swapping the 13th and 15th picks, and then some other trade compensation depending on who's on the board. And then the other one is the Jets giving up that second round pick, possibly both. But we should see. It it's kind of like a very sticky situation where there's a lot of rumors and a lot of stuff where like everyone knows that Aaron's going to be a Jet, but at the same time, nobody knows how that's going to happen.
It's going to be fascinating to see what happens. Before I ask you, the ultimate Aaron Rodgers question, I do want to talk with you about some famous Jets draft mishaps because when the NFL, I'm sorry to bring back memories for Jet fans because when the NFL draft used to be in New York City, it seemed like every time the Jets picked, no matter was number 1 or number 251, the Jet fans always went bananas.
Yeah, they're a passionate fan base, man. As much as the team sucks, they're passionate.
I can attest because I can already hear firemen and screaming through my head.
Jets, 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 Jets. You already know, man.
Yep. So you think 1983 before you? I hope that was before either one of our time.
It was, yeah. I'm not that old yet. Yeah.
How about this draft? They Jets drafted Ken O'Brien from California, David.
Yeah, Ken O'Brien. That is a name. He so it's funny how like it's funny because as bad of a pick as Ken O'Brien was, he's still one of the best Jets quarterbacks in their history. So like
That's it. That's not saying much.
yeah, that's what I mean, man. So like that's kind of like the state the franchise has been in for the past 60 something years now. You know, it's been
And
bad.
And you think who else? Who I remember somebody else going 3 picks after the Jets took Ken O'Brien. I can't remember his name. I think he's in Cannon, right?
What was that? That was Marino, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Whoopsie.
Oh, so that I don't think Jet fans during that time, like, so it's funny because with that and the Mud Bowl and stuff, there's a whole era of Jet fans that really hate Dolphins fans. And Jet fans, like, of today's age, have no idea why that, like, the old fans hate Miami so much until, like, they look back and see Jets drafted Ken O'Brien, and then right below him is Dan Marino. Then you got the mud game in the AFC Championship game. Like, there's so much with Shula freaking not putting the tarps down on the field. Like it's been an interest that's a rivalry that I think is about to start heating up again with both teams. Well, with Miami starting to look like they're about to be really good again.
And then 1995. I'm just thinking the Jets could have drafted a really good defensive tackle for Miami named Warren Sapp. And who did New York take its first round pick that year?
95. Oh, since I don't remember his name, he probably sucked.
Kyle Brady.
Oh, Brady? Oh, no way. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah. Bet you they want that one back.
Yeah, Rich Kotite. Yeah, and the Jets took Kyle Brady instead of Warren Sapp.
Oh, Kotite. Oh my God, yeah. That was the dark years. That was right before Parcells ended up taking the Jets over. That was a dark. Jets fans don't like to talk about that.
Yeah, trying to.
Oh man, there's so many. Look at the Vernon Golston pick. You know,
wasn't he supposed to be the next great pass rusher?
he was, and I don't think he even played the full season, if I remember correctly. Or if he did, he didn't get on the stat sheet. I'd have to double check that, but he was bad.
And then I remember in 2009, the Jets drafted Mark Sanchez. Well, in his first 2 years, he looked like a competent quarterback. Led the Jets to the AFC Championship game twice. And then we know what happened. He ran into his
ran into Mangold's bum. Yeah.
And right into Brandon Moore's butt.
Yeah. Right. The butt fumble existed, and then Jets fans were, oh man, that brings back such bad memories. You have no idea the humiliation that would be. And it sucks because Mark Sanchez is actually like a really good guy. So seeing that happen to him was not good. I think that was, I can't remember, I can't recall if that was his last season starting with the Jets, but after the Jets he didn't get a like full-time starting gig after that. I mean, he played a bit for the Eagles, but that
Who
was the end of his rope.
who didn't play quarterback for the Eagles before Carson Wentz and Jalen Hurts.
Yeah, that's a good point. The QB carousal that the Jets have had.
Yeah. And then one that's fresh in the mind of Jet fans. How about 2021? Oh, wait, you drafted Zach Wilson. And by the way, if the Jets would have lost basically all of their games that year, you would have ended up with the number one pick in the 2021 draft and would have taken the guy from Clemson, South Carolina. I can't remember his name.
Yeah, Trevor Lawrence. Jets fans are probably wishing that that was the case now.
Instead, you beat the LA Rams and Cleveland Browns, I think, right?
Yep. Yeah, actually, it's funny. The Jets just released the punter that cost the Jets the first round pick. Braden Mann. He had a game saving tackle against the Los Angeles Rams, and he's no longer on the team now. They just waived him, and they signed Thomas Morstead, formerly from the Saints, who I'm actually interviewing tomorrow.
Isn't he like 95 years old?
He's an old man. Yeah, I think he's 37. He's pretty old. Yeah.
And then instead of drafting Trevor Lawrence, who thankfully for my Jags ended up in Jacksonville, you drafted Zach Wilson. And I think every Jet fan will want him out of New York now.
Oh yeah, this is what I wanted to, because I was looking this up and this was pretty bad. So I mean, we all know how bad Zach Wilson's rookie season was, and his last season potentially was even worse. He already had like the worst EPA of starting quarterbacks. But it gets even worse. His accuracy rating was a 6.9. That was 34th among quarterbacks. His deep ball completion percentage was 30%, 29th. Pressure completion 20.4%. That was 34th. Play action play action completion percentage at 48.1, also 34th. Red zone completion percentage 47.1, also over 30. And clean pocket completion percentage, where you hope a quarterback does good, it was 64.4, and that was 33rd in the NFL among quarterbacks. So basically all the main all the main stats where you want a quarterback to do good, he wasn't even among the top 32 for most of them, which if that doesn't say how bad he was, and how much he hindered the Jets' success last year, I don't know what does.
So ultimately, do you think the Jets will complete the Aaron Rodgers trade?
Personally, at the end of the day, yes, I think it happens during or on the NFL draft, one of those times.
Aaron Rodgers in New York would be very interesting. Might be a soap opera waiting to explode.
Oh yeah. Oh, and for what it's worth, I've heard through the rumor mill that they might have Roger Goodell kind of push this trade to come through for scheduling purposes. That is what I've heard for primetime scheduling games, because supposedly everybody wants to see Rodgers in New York.
Do you guys play an Arrowhead this year?
Ooh, I don't know actually. I'd have to double check that. That
That'd be a spicy encounter. Jets Chiefs.
Yeah, it'd be like a passing of the old guard, or passing of the old guard to the new. Maybe see that's where stuff will get pretty good, but I always worry, man. As a Jets fan, I think you always think they're gonna stink. So I'm hoping not this year.
Let's see you. Actually, I think yeah, the Chiefs go to the Meadowlands.
They are going to Meadowlands. Okay, I wasn't sure if it was them coming to Jersey or if it was the Jets going to KC.
You go to Vegas and Denver.
Vegas and Denver. That's it. Okay, that Denver game's going to be interesting with Hackett coming back. Maybe it'd be a Hackett revenge game.
All right, Thomas. Thanks for jet setting with me. Hopefully the Jets can get a competent quarterback for the first time since Joe Willie Namath.
I'm hoping so, man. Rodgers won't have to try too hard to pass his record, so we'll see. Thank you for having me on, Dylan. I appreciate it.